Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyasa Kripa Sindhuvya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnaveभ्यो Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Satyanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Very nicely done. Thank you, Mataji. So we will continue with verse 23. Part of it was discussed. Updrashta Anumanta Prabhata Dosta Maheshwaram Paramatma Et Paramatma Eti Chap Yukto Dehe Asmin Purusha Param. Yes, Mataji. Priya Mataji, please continue.
Upadrishtanu manta cha bharata bhokta maheshwara paramatmeti chapi ukto dahesmin purusha para. Yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor who exists as the overseer and permitter and who is known as the super soul. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. So, relationship between living entity and super soul. Now, philosophers and atheists, they consider that body is one and soul and super soul are just one. They are not two. Whereas the devotees accept that the body is the Kshetra, the soul is the Kshetragya or individual knower, and the supreme knower is the super soul or the Paramatma form of nature. So, Lord is always said para. Para means transcendental. So he is beyond the three modes of material nature or the influence of material nature. But the human beings are under control of the material nature. If we go how living entities get different type of forms, living forms, then you will remember that as soon as soul has a glance, as soon as Lord Krishna has a glance over the soul, and based on its desire, a certain form of life is granted to that particular soul, and the material nature immediately comes into play and gives a particular type of body. It may be body of a plant, tree, insect, or aquatic, or a bird, or even a human being, or even demigods. So we see that the three things are quite independent and separate. The material body is material, it is perishable. Then there is soul, which is part and parcel of Lord Krishna, which is imperishable, which is immutable. It is not cut, can't be cut. Water cannot touch it. Air cannot touch it. So this is representative of as a supreme soul, then of supreme soul, and then third comes Paramatma or super soul. Super soul is universal expansion of Lord Krishna himself. But individual soul is just individual soul, and it knows about its own Kshetra. So it is Kshetragya. There are two Kshetragya, as I said. Field of activity is Kshetra. Field of activity is human body, living entity's body. And there is soul, which is the knower of that field. That is individual field. That is soul. And there is super soul or Paramatma in the form of. But ultimately, as soon as individual comes in contact with material nature, he starts enjoying the material nature. He thinks he wants to control the material nature. He wants to possess and claim ownership or proprietorship over the material nature. Whereas he forgets that he is just the servant of Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is part and parcel and a subordinate to Super Soul. So the result is that this material nature has been created by Supreme Personality of Godhead for his transcendental enjoyment. But this living entity, who is individual soul, he starts considering himself as the enjoyer. And there is what the problem arises. What the problem arises, as soon as individual soul starts enjoying the material nature, immediately he starts a phase of material kleshas or klesha-agnis. That is, he starts suffering. All the miseries are because of this fact, we forget that we are not the enjoyer. Supreme Personality of Godhead is the supreme enjoyer, and everything exists for him. He has created everything for his own enjoyment, not for our own enjoyment. So this verse emphasizes that transcendental enjoyer is Supreme Lord. He is the supreme proprietor because he is the owner. We are not the owner. We are just we are just a custodian of that property which Lord has created. And he is Upadrashta, he is quite observer, overseer, and also permitter. He permits the soul like a loving father to fulfill its desire. And this is super soul. So they have again defined the super soul, what it is. We can so see here the super soul in the form of Chaturbhuj Narayana, Narayan form. Yes, Mataji.
The individual soul enjoys the activities of a particular field, but the super soul is present as the witness, overseer, upadrishta, permitter, anumanta, and the supreme enjoyer. He is Paramatma, not Atma. Para means transcendental, so Atma and Paramatma are different. The super soul, Paramatma, has legs and hands everywhere, while individual soul does not. The Paramatma or the Supreme Lord residing within sanctions of all the individual souls desires for material enjoyment. Without the Lord's sanction, the individual soul cannot do anything. The individual is Bhukta or the sustained, and the Lord is Bhokta or the maintainer. Lord is staying within the innumerable living entities as their friend.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
So the last word is very important. As their friend, he is a well-wisher, like a loving father. So super soul always accompanies soul, individual soul. And we have seen so many pictures. Here in this picture, you can see these are different forms of life. And the middle feature, which is just a bright spot all along in the all living forms, that is super soul. It is present in everyone, everywhere. So it is because the individual soul is part and parcel of Lord. So Lord, like a loving father, is always accompanying a living entity in the form of super soul in the heart of that individual or living form. So this is how it is described. Now, we have request this we have gone back. Oh, sorry. This we have got. Yes, Mataji, continue with next slide. Here the living entity.
Yet the living entity has the tendency to reject the sanction of the Supreme Lord and act independently in an attempt to dominate nature. Due to this propensity, he is called the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord. The living entity can be situated either in the material energy or in the spiritual energy. As long as he is conditioned by the material energy, the Supreme Lord, as his friend, the Super Soul stays with him just to get him to return to the spiritual energy. The Lord is always eager to take him back to the spiritual energy, but due to his minute independence, the individual entity is continually rejecting the association of spiritual light. This misuse of independence is the cause of his material strife in the conditioned nature.
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
So now we know that living entity is created by the marginal or tatastha energy of Lord Krishna. That marginal means it has got input from the internal potency or internal energy, that is Antaranga Shakti, and also some input from the external energy, that is Bahiranga Shakti. Now, Lord has given minute independence, though it is marginal entity, marginal energy of Lord. Lord has given minute independence wherever it wants to go, whether it wants to enjoy transcendental nature of the Antaranga energy or wants to enjoy the material nature, which is part of the external energy of Lord. Now, minute independence is there, so super soul will not interfere. But the soul or individual soul wants to enjoy the material nature, which forgetting that Lord is the proprietor, Lord it is supreme enjoyer, and Lord has created this material nature for his or Prakriti for his own enjoyment. The result is that as soon as it comes, living entity comes in contact with material nature, it tries to dominate over it, take possession of it, or exercise lordship over this material nature, and that is the beginning of the suffering. That means as soon as living entity or the soul, individual soul, comes in contact with material nature, it starts the journey of miseries and sufferings starts. But the super soul, like a loving father, it has given some minute independence to soul. So that is why it is called permitter and anumanta and anudrashta. and also supreme, the living entity forget that he is the supreme enjoyer, bhokta. So he's a supreme enjoyer, in fact. So he starts instead enjoying himself, and that that is the result of our the soul becomes conditioned, and the beginning of misery or kleshagni begins. And we know there are three types of kleshagni: adhyatmik, adidevik, and adi bhautik. So the individual starts suffering from these three types of kleshagni or material sickness or miseries. Yes, Mataji.
The Lord is constantly instructing from within and from without. From without, he gives instruction as stated in Bhagavad Gita, and from within, he tries to convince the living entity that his activities in the material field are not conducive to real happiness. Just give it up and turn your fate toward me. Then you will be happy, he says. Thus, the intelligent person who places his faith in the Paramatma or the Supreme Personality of Godhead begins to advance towards a blissful eternal life of knowledge. Hare Krishna.
So this knowledge that we are, the body is material, it is perishable, it is wrongly, it wants to use or enjoy the material nature of Prakriti. This is one fact. Secondly, the soul is individual soul. It is part and parcel of Lord, and it is under subordination of Vibhu Atma or Paramatma, which is present in the heart as super soul. So as soon as this, but the Father always keeps on instructing. Now, how this knowledge comes from internally and externally. Internally, super soul gives us vision and also knowledge that what you should act, but the soul dominates, ignores that signals. And externally, when we come in association with pure devotees, or we take shelter of a pure bona fide spiritual master, then this knowledge is also transmitted by him, by him to us, that we are soul, we are not this body, and the soul is meant to serve the Supreme Lord eternally, because it is part and parcel. It has, because of some by default, it has separated from Supreme Personality of Godhead and sent to this prison or this world of miseries where he is suffering. This is ultimately this knowledge. In earlier verses, we have seen Arjuna had asked 6 questions. Lord has defined all those things: Purush, Prakriti, Kshetra, Kshetragya, and Jnanam and Geyam. And there were 2 enjoyers, there were 2 fields, and there were 2 things to be known, that was soul, super soul, and also the material body. So this knowledge, knowing this knowledge, having this knowledge, Lord is now going to tell how this knowledge can be attained. So some can do it by bhakti marg, some can do it by karma marg, some can do it by gyan marg. Ultimately, destination is to realize that devotional, the importance of the supremacy of devotional service. But if we do not realize, the process has been defined, that take the shelter of your devotees or the spiritual master, follow his instructions, and get freedom from anarthas, 6 anarthas, and thereafter adopt to devotional service. But all Jnana Margi, Karma Margi, and Ashtanga yogis, they are all working in the same direction, but differently. They are not on their right path, though the goal is same. So this is verse number 24. Yes, this importance of right source of hearing. Now, Lord is, in fact, going to mention about the importance of hearing in this verse. Yes, Patil.
Okay. Ya evam viti purusham prakritim cha gune saha sarvatha vartamano pi na sa bhuyo vijayate. One who understands this philosophy concerning material beings, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He may not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. Hare Krishna.
Regardless of his present position, even that means we don't have to be very big jnani or pandita or learned persons in Vedas. Any person can take up devotional service or bhakti marg. Now, what is the philosophy which has been mentioned so far? That the relationship with the body the individual soul and the super soul or the Paramatma. And what is the role of each one, and how each one, the body and the soul, is controlled by Supreme Personality of Godhead, and how does these three interact with the Prakriti or material nature. One who knows this philosophy now is sure to get liberation. You know, the attitude of a person who knows that I'm not the doer. Ahankar Vimuratma Karta Aham Iti Manite. Verse number 27 of chapter 3, Lord has said, Prakriti Kriya Marani Guna Karmani Sarvasa. Guna Karmani Sarvasa. Everything is done by the three modes of material nature when it comes in contact with the material nature of Prakriti. But Ahankar Vimuratma, the individual soul or individual entity, because of false ego or false pride, considers that I'm the doer. In fact, we have already learned earlier there are three doers. Anybody would like to tell who are three doers? There were three doers. Yes, Mataji.
The soul, super soul, and the Paramat.
Yes.
Soul, super soul, and
Material nature.
natural
Prakriti.
nature.
These are three. Is it okay? There are three. Three doers are there. The soul desires something, material nature of Prakriti fulfills it, gets ready to fulfill it. But before this, super soul permits. Just now we heard that Anumanta and Anudrashta. Super soul permits, soul desires, super soul permits, and the material nature gets the work done or accomplishes is the basis. So one who knows that, now this is the importance knowing this chapter, that we are, these 6 questions apply to each one of us. Now if we know this, that who is doing who is acting in this material world and what is the cause of our material miseries, then one will not enter into this prison or this kind of miserable world, because then sufferings will begin. So one who knows this works in the devotional service of Lord, works for devotional service of Lord, and also he gets liberation. He does not come back, re-enter into the cycle of birth and death. So this is a graphic description. Result of knowing the philosophy, one gets liberation. How does one get liberation? One who understands philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the mode of nature. Now, material nature, Prakriti, living entity is here refers to the soul. It does not refer to the body, material body. And the interaction between the soul and the material nature meant that the result is that whatever soul desires, the material nature fulfills it, and this kind of integration between the soul and the material nature of Prakriti takes place. So knowledge of truly understanding the relationship between soul, super soul, the result is liberation and return to spiritual world. We are here in the material world, and we are suffering because we are material world. We are subject to different kind of three modes of material nature. Under influence of them, we want to enjoy, we want to lord over the nature, we want to show proprietorship over material nature, and that is the cause of our suffering. So, but one who is not, who knows this thing, he does not work on these lines, he works on the spiritual lines. He is transcendental, he achieves a para or transcendental level where he considers not anything for himself but for Krishna and performs loving devotional service to Krishna. So what is the purpose of this knowledge? To understand how the living entity has fallen into the material world in a precarious condition. I told you that this world is ashashvatam dukhalayam. Ashashvatam means it's temporary, it is not eternal, it is changing. Everything is changing in this material world. And we know that nature, everything is changing here, including human body is also changing. Living entity himself is also changing. But soul remains unchanged. And we are in precarious, very dangerous condition or very pathetic condition because we are playing with the material nature and permitting soul to do whatever it is wants to do. So how to understand our position? So one who understands this integration of the individual entity, the material nature, and the role of super soul, then he gets knowledge. This knowledge gives him that liberation or liberation from these sufferings of this miserable world. Yes. This one, after this, anybody else would like to read?
Okay. ध्याने नात्मनि पश्यन्ति केशिदात्मन् मात्मना अन्ये संख्येन योगेन कर्म योगेन चापरे that super soul is perceived by some through meditation, by some through the cultivation of knowledge, and by others through working without fruitive desire. Hare Krishna.
So there are basically two broad categories. We go by this. And that super soul is perceived by some through meditation, by some through cultivation knowledge, and by others through working without. So this is one class, and the other class is devotees. So Bhakti Marg is one. So the devotee considers everything, their real position of himself, the material nature, and the super soul. Number one. Second class, they are talking about now devotee, as I just mentioned, knows that I am individual soul and super soul is my master and I am a servitor and performs devotional service to Lord Krishna. Now, what these three classes of people do? First is by meditation. The Jnani, they meditate on the Supreme Form. When they meditate on the Brahman feature of Supreme Lord, they are also good devotees of Lord because they are trying to understand and they are sukritinas. We will remember that Jnanis are also sukritinas. They are, because they are at least pursuing a goal to know the Supreme Personality of God. So they are, by meditation, they are trying to gain this knowledge that the integrate or relationship between the soul, super soul, and material nature. So they are doing by process of meditation. Second category here is by cultivation of knowledge. So Jnani, the yogi is doing by meditation, and Jnani is doing by attaining knowledge, and also fruitive desire. Without fruitive desire means nishkam karma yoga. The karmis are trying to know this super soul. So all three classes, I mentioned two broad categories. First category of devotees who know their real position, they are eternal servitor of Lord. And these people, they other than devotees, these are three category of people. Ashtanga yogi doing meditation. And ultimately, what is Ashtanga yogi doing? Ashtanga yogi is meditating on the Brahman effulgence of Lord. So gradually, when his devotion develops, when gradually his knowledge improves, then he comes to the level to know that this effulgence is coming from the transcendental body of Lord. So it is not the end, it is just a beginning or part of the Supreme. Then he comes to know about Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he starts devotional service. So this is one form. Now, second is cultivation of knowledge and meditation I've discussed, and by others working without fruitive workers. Now, this Sankhya Yogi meditation is also referring here to Sankhya Yogi, the analytical study. They want to study what does analytical study means? Sankhya philosophy means that the body and soul are different, right? So when he comes to know that soul is there, then the body is made of 24 elements. Then he considers that soul is 25th element. And then gradually he realizes 26th element is the super soul. And this, when he knows super soul, then he knows that what super soul is, where from it has come. He knows that it is part of the Supreme Personality of God, or presentation, or expansion, or universal expansion, or versatile expansion of Supreme Personality of Godhead. This super soul is, then he also develops gradually devotional service to Lord. So the process of devotees, the process of knowing super soul for the devotee is the easiest and the fastest. Whereas for Ashtanga yogis, for Nishkam Karma yogis, and for Jnanis, it is very difficult and long also. But ultimately, they also realize that what is the position. Yes, Richa Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Understanding through various types of yogas, Lord explains two classes of conditioned souls. Faithful in spiritual life, dhyana. Some perceive the super soul through meditation. Sankhya yoga. others through the cultivation of knowledge, karma yoga, still others through working without fruitive desire. Atheists, agnostics, and skeptics are beyond the sense of a spiritual understanding. It also includes those who establish the doctrine of monoism. Devotees of the Lord are best situated in spiritual understanding because they know that beyond the material nature are the spiritual world and supreme personality of Godhead who expands as Paramatma.
So this is a graphic summary of what we have just now discussed. Faithful in spiritual life, they are Sukritinas. And Sukritinas, they have a different approach of understanding. Each one, the three categories, they have different category approach or pathway to know, understand supreme, the super soul. Jnana, they through meditation. Then Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga I have just mentioned that they understand that body and soul are different. Then body is composed of 24 elements. 25th element is soul. 26th element is super soul. Then gradually they proceed to know what super soul is coming, where from this super soul is coming from, and ultimately they also they also take up devotional service. Then Karma Yogi, they perform just non-fruitive activities or akarma. That means they do not enjoy. They have Nishkam Karma Yoga, that they are also going to, ultimate goal for them also is to realize. But the best position is that of devotees, which is mentioned here. Now, devotees knows that this is material world. And Krishna belongs to a spiritual world. I have to take leave from this material world and reach spiritual world, that is Goloka, Vrindavana or Krishna. Yes, Mataji.
Anye tvemajjananta shrutvan yebhya upasate tepi chati tarantyeva mrityum shruti parayana. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death.
So now, again, there are those who are not conversant in this spiritual knowledge. The common man does not possess this knowledge of soul, super soul, and or the relationship of these two with the material nature, and also the complex spiritual issues which are given in our scriptures. So how does he attain this knowledge? So this person, the simple process is of hearing, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Vismaranam. We will remember Prahlad Maharaj this shloka, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Vismaranam, Archanam Vandanam, Archanam Vandanam, and Dasyam Sakhyam, Atma Nivedana, Archanam Vandanam, Kirtanam. So these 9 processes of, so the most important, first comes Shravanam. Shravanam is most important. And in this picture, what is happening?
I think he is Kapila Muni teaching his mother Devahuti.
Devahuti, yes, Father, thank you. So Kapila Muni, because he's incarnation of Lord Krishna, he's expansion of Krishna, Kapila Muni. So he's teaching his mother. So giving instructions to his mother on spiritual matters. So in fact, but he is an authority. Now, authority in our case, in this age, is only bona fide spiritual master. So we hear from him. Then we can attain this knowledge. No need for jnana, no need for nishkam karma, no need for ashtanga yogi, or no need to become a devotee as such initially. So a common man, even on what we are doing, we are also in the process of hearing. All of us, in fact, sitting here in this classroom, we are also hearing only, because we are not jnani, we are not karmi, we don't know anything what scriptures say. So we are just hearing. This is external instruction of the knowledge. That is external transmission of knowledge. Just now we have read internal and external. So again, there are those who, although not conversant, begin to worship the Supreme. Now, after hearing, they develop faith. When faith is there, Shraddha is there, they seek sadhu sangha. When there is sadhu sangha, the association of pure devotees, and they also go for initiation. Thereafter, anarth nivriti, the wrong things, unwanted desires, they also are wiped off. When there is anarth nivriti, then there is, first there was bhajan kriya, then anarth nivriti, thereafter nishta, You develop steadiness of faith. Nishtha, ruchi, then you develop a taste for doing devotional service, and then asakti becomes addicted to it. So asakti, then bhav bhakti develops. So this is the process, and this is common for a common man, and not a pure devotee like us. We are contaminated souls. We are fallen souls. We do not know anything about the scriptures. We do not possess any rules. We do not practice any strict rules and regulations of devotional service. But by hearing, because we have come in association with this pious company, that is how we are developing. Yes, Mataji.
A common man, if he's a good soul, he can advance by hearing. Hearing process, Shravanam, is very important. Lord Chaitanya preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world. He gave great stress to hearing. Lord Chaitanya emphasized on hearing the transcendental vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. On hearing from realized souls, gradually worship of the Supreme Lord follows. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from authoritative persons will help one transcend this material existence and go back home to Godhead.
So this is a conclusive summary. What are the steps? A common man, if he has a good luck, he is a good soul, just mentioned, he is a good soul, he happens to come in contact with a pure devotee or a spiritual master. What happens then? Then he hears from him about glories, name, Nam, Roop, Leela and Karma of Krishna, or name, form, attributes and pastimes of Lord Krishna. And then he follows his steps because he is a Tattvadarshi. He knows, he has seen the truth. So the common man starts following the spiritual master. What is the result? Gradually he develops to pure devotion. So this is the great process. It doesn't require any Ashtanga Yogi. It does not require any kind of detailed jnana or any kind of nishkam karma. So after answering the vision of knowledge, this is given in the last section of this chapter, verse number 27 to 35. Jnana Chakshu means the eyes, of the vision of knowledge, or the eyes of wisdom. So Gyan Chakshu we are described in. What is the Gyan Chakshu? What does this word mean here? The Gyan Chakshu is meant that person who possesses the perfect knowledge has Gyan Chakshu, or has the eyes of perfect knowledge. And what is the knowledge we have already discussed. And what is the process of acquiring knowledge we have already discussed before in earlier verses. One who can see super soul, living entities and material nature in their proper perspective, sees through the eyes of knowledge. Because a person who attains this knowledge, he knows what is the role of soul, what is the role of super soul, and what is the role of material nature or prakriti, and how these things are interacting. We in our normal day-to-day activities, we are not aware of soul, we are not aware of our super soul. We are just busy doing something. Whereas these things are being done by the three modes of material nature, which when individual soul comes in with the contact with the material nature of prakriti, he gets contaminated and he starts enjoying this material nature. So this is the Gyan Kakshu, but a devotee who has Gyan Kakshu, who has perfect knowledge, he distinguishes between soul, super soul, and also the prakriti or material nature. Yes, Mataji.
Yavat sanyajate kinchit sarvam sthavar jangamam kshetra kshetragye sanyogat vidhi bharat sharbha. O chief of Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field.
So this is further, knowledge is further given here. Why activity is taking place? Because we know there is Kshetra, that is field of activity. Then the Kshetra given who knows about the field of activity. So whatever is happening in this world, whether it is a moving entity or a non-moving entity, It is combination of field of activities and the knower of field. That means individual soul desires and he gets it done through the material nature of Prakriti. So everything is happening because of this interaction between three, that is soul, super soul, and also the material nature. Yes.
Whatever is created is but a combination of the living entity and material nature. Without the touch of the superior nature, the living entity, nothing can grow. There are many manifestations like trees, mountains, and hills which are not moving. And there are many existences which are moving, and all of them are but the combination of material nature and the superior nature, the living entity. The interaction between the material nature and the superior nature is eternally going on, effected by the Supreme Lord, the controller of both the superior and inferior natures. The material nature is created by him, and the superior nature is placed in this material nature. And thus all these activities and manifestations take place.
So we know there are two things only here mentioned: emphasis is on the soul and the field of activity. Soul is the Purusha, but the real Purusha is Super Soul, because he is the supreme enjoyer. Purush means enjoyer. It does not signify male or female. Purusha means that supreme enjoyer. Supreme enjoyer is a Krishna only. And super soul is the master. The soul is servant, but the soul, because of its tendencies, wants to enjoy, ignore the super soul and wants to enjoy the material nature. So everything is taking place because the soul is getting interacted with the material nature. So it forgets about the superior. So this is the whether it is moving or non-moving, everything is happening because the interaction between the soul and the field of activities, that is Kshetra and Kshetragya. So we can see in this picture, you can see this is on left hand side, there is a prison of the material world, and there is another where spiritual world is there. Devotees are listening to spiritual master and he is giving instructions here. So, and what is our position? We can see that in this material world or material prison, all of us are having so many miseries and sufferings. But then beyond it, there is a spiritual world where there is just bliss and nothing else. Yes, Mataji.
A spiritually realized person can distinguish between his spirit and matter in all the circumstances. Moving, whatever you see in the existence, moving, non-moving, only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field.
So field of activities is Kshetra or the physical body, and the knower of the field is the soul. The supreme knower is supreme personality of God or Paramatma. This is mentioned here. Yes, Mataji. Yeah, this is very nice verse for the remembering 28. Samam Sarveshu Bhuteshu.
Samam Sarveshu Bhuteshu Tishtanta Parmeshwaram Vinashyasta Vinashyanta Ya Pashyati Sa Pashyati. One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understands that neither the soul nor the super soul is ever destroyed, actually sees.
So this is a mature vision of a person who is in knowledge. What is this maturity is that he sees. When we see, in our day-to-day life, we come across so many people. They have different forms, they have different features, different complexion, different characteristics or bodily features. We identify those persons on the basis of their external appearance. But a person who sees, he sees each one irrespective of their external features. He sees in them the soul and the super soul, that they are representative of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, whether it is a human being or a living, any other living form of life, he is the person in knowledge, and he actually sees. He does not distinguish or demarcate between the external on the basis of external appearance. We are this our vision is material vision. That is why we consider people differently, black color, white color, grayish color, then tall or handsome or ugly or something. So this is our material vision. But a person who is in knowledge has a spiritual vision. He knows that each one is same, whether it's animal, because there is a presence of soul and also presence of super soul or Paramatma in this form. So you can see that this picture shows super soul or Paramatma, the Narayan four-arm Narayan form, and he's present in the heart of each and every moving and non-moving trees, birds, leaves, animals, insects, then human beings, everywhere, or insects. So they are present. The super soul is. This is a vision of a person who is in knowledge. Yes, Mataji.
One who sees the indestructible super soul always accompanies the indestructible individual soul in all bodies is the actual seer. How such vision is possible? By good association with real knower of spiritual subjects. Who is the man in real knowledge? One who can see three things in its proper perspective. The body, its proprietor, the soul, the super soul as a friend of the soul.
So this is definition of one who sees, actually sees. That means he is the seer. What is, because he is he has attained this knowledge. And what is this knowledge? That there is a kshetra, there is kshetragya, and there are two kshetragya, or knower. And those knower of field are, one is Supreme Personality of Godhead, who knows the field of activities of each and every living form, and there is individual soul that knows about the individual field of activity only. You will remember we had a picture in this chapter in early stages where a field was shown, and there was sun shining on the sky, and there was a person, farmer, who appeared in the scene. An analogy of a king was given, where the king knows the field of activities of all of his citizens. Not only he knows about his palace, but all the fields owned by different farmers in his estate, whereas the individual farmer knows about his own farm only. He does not possess knowledge of all farms. Yes, Mataji.
Those who are ignorant think that when the body is destroyed, everything is finished. But actually, after the destruction of the body, both the soul and the super soul exist. And they go on eternally in many various moving and non-moving forms. Both the super soul and the individual soul continue. They are not destroyed. One who can see in this way can actually see what is happening.
So what is happening? Then the person in knowledge knows that at the time of annihilation, everything is annihilated, but the soul and super soul, they are transcendental. They are not annihilated. They merge into the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as soon as the creation is recreated and the material nature is created again, the soul and super soul appear again in the and assume different kind of bodily forms or life forms. So this is the real knowledge. That means the ultimate goal or point of saying is that this body is perishable, which is gets perished or get destroyed or vanished. It vanishes at the time of when the annihilation takes place, and when the creation takes place again, the soul and super soul appear again and assume different type of life forms. Yes, Mataji.
One samam pashyani sarvatra samam vasthiti mishram na hinstya manam tatoyati param gatim. One who sees the super soul equally present everywhere, in every living being, does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destination.
So, Pandita Samdarshana, you remember the shloka where it was mentioned? A Pandita, what does he see? A Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a hog, or a dog eater. He sees everyone at the equal platform. He does not distinguish between them because he is Tattvadarshi. He has seen the super soul. He knows that super soul is present or the Supreme Lord is present in the heart of each one. So this picture reminds us of that shloka, that one sees the super soul equally present everywhere in every living being, does not degrade himself by his mind. That means he does not degrade, means that he does not fall down from this knowledge, because he is a person in knowledge, and his soul does not get contaminated by coming in contact with material nature. So he does not degrade, does not assume. Degradation means taking birth in the repeated birth and going down in the order of life forms. You know, the human form is only 4 legs. I think everybody will remember that there are 84 legs yonis. The beasts are about 30 legs. Then beasts are 30. Then plants and trees are 20 legs. And then 11 legs is the, 11 legs is trees, plants, living entity. Then 4 legs is human beings. Then aquatics are 9 legs. 10 legs are birds. And 20 legs is, what is that? 20 legs. 30 legs is, of course, beast. 20 legs is plants and trees. And then insects, yes. 10 legs are insects. So this is the classification. And a person who has knowledge, he sees each one equal. So you can see the human life we have got is so rare. Only 4 legs out of 84 legs in this. And if we get degraded, we assume the lower forms of life. These are lower forms of life. And we go to even hellish planets also. So we have a chance to upgrade ourselves to higher planets and rise to the. And what is this knowledge? This is the knowledge about the body, the Kshetra, Kshetragya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Supreme Super Soul. If one has got this distinctive knowledge and distinguishes each and activity of his and classifies his activity into these 3 grades, why it is happening, why I'm suffering, why good things are happening to others, not me, then there is no misery. So please read this one. Actuals here. After this, anybody would like to read, then please raise your hand. Yes, Mataji, please. Actual seer.
Actual seer does not degrade himself by pursuing selfish desires of the mind. What is the current situation of living entity? One has situated himself differently than in a spiritual world. What is the role of mind? Mind is generally addicted to the sense gratification, which blinds the Ellie in material world. When the mind turns to the super soul, one becomes advanced. Then one approaches the transcendental destination, actual seer.
Thank you, Mataji. So how one becomes actual seer? How does one get the knowledge? The process of knowledge first. What is the knowledge he attains? What is that knowledge? And how he becomes, because his approach becomes transcendental. He does not see the physical or material body. He identifies everyone as soul and super soul. This is how the vision develops. Anyone else would like to read? Or Mataji would like to continue? Yes, Mataji, I think there is no one willing. Please continue.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prakrityev cha karmani kriyamani sarvasha ya pashyati tathatman maktraram sa pashyati. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that self does nothing, actually sees.
Okay. So now Lord, out of his infinite mercy and causeless mercy towards the devotees, he has given us a body, which is like a machine. Now, how does this machine work? Because the actions of this machine are dependent on our past karmas and desires, right? So all acts are forced by this bodily constitution. Past karma, we will remember the example we gave. If one is not fond of food, pictures were given. If one is not fond of wearing proper clothing, then next form of life is tree for him, because trees are always naked and they are subject to so many changes in adverse weather. Now, a person who does not restrict his desire for consumption of food or other things, it does not exercise discrimination in eating. He, because of his unsatiated desire, he assumes the form of a hog or a pig who continuously eats, whether his stomach is full or not, it will not stop eating. So this machine is acting based on the intense desires that we have or the karmas we have performed, but soul is not concerned with these things. Soul is indifferent. Soul is not doing any activity. Because of our past karma desires, body, this physical body or material body or kshetra, when it comes in contact with the prakriti or material nature, then it starts working. And God has given us this machine in the form of a body to fulfill those desires. Yes, Swam Prabha Mataji, you raised your hand. Yes, Mataji, please. Swam Prabha Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Richard and Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
The body is made by material nature under the direction of the super soul, but activities of the body are not his doing. Whatever one is supposed to do, either for happiness or for distress, one is forced to do because of the bodily constitution. Is outside all these bodily activities. This body is given according to one's past desires. Practically speaking, the body is a machine designed by the Supreme Lord to fulfill desires. Because of desires, one is put into difficult circumstances to suffer or to enjoy. This transcendental vision of the living entity, when developed, makes one separate from bodily activities. One who has such a vision is an actual seer.
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
So we have seen that who is the actual seer? Actual seer is that Prakriti is a doer. Jiva is not the doer. The soul is not the doer. Prakriti and the material body, they are the real doers in this case. So one who knows this fact, he knows that he is acting, having a material concept of life. And God is kind enough. Supreme Personality God is very kind enough to his child. He permits, gives the body, whatever kind of body you want, a body of a tree, body of a hawk, body of a devotee, or body of a demigod, based on our desires and karma. He gives us that form and he wants us to fulfill our desire. He has given us minute independence. But we are using this minute independence indiscriminately in a wrong manner. We want to satisfy our own senses, forgetting that everything is meant, created by Lord Krishna. It is for his enjoyment. He is the Parabhokta, Parambhokta. He is a person who supreme enjoyer of everything. Yes, Mataji, 31.
Hare Krishna. Yada bhuta prutak bhavam ekastam anupashyati tata eva cha vistaram brahma sampadyate tada. When a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, and he sees how beings are expanded everywhere, he attains to the Brahman conception. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. So you can see in this picture a person who is actual seer, who is actual in perfect knowledge. He can see these animals, all kind of entities here, and human beings also. He sees them not through their material concept of life, not through his material concept of life. He does not see their material body. Instead, he sees in them the presence of soul and super soul, Paramatma. So when a sensible man ceases to see different identities, we see through our material eyes, different people have different color, shade, nationality, or features, or bodily features, or complexion, or nation, so many things. But the person who is in knowledge with the actual seer, he knows that Lord has expanded everywhere and is present in the heart of each one as super soul or Paramatma. Yes, Mataji.
When one sees that the various bodies of living entities arise due to the different desires of the individual soul and do not actually belong to the soul itself, one actually sees. In the material conception of life, we find someone a demigod, someone a human being, a dog, a cat, etc. This material differentiation is due to a material conception of life. After the destruction of the material body, the spirit soul is one. The spirit soul, due to contact with material nature, gets different types of bodies. When one can see this, he attains spiritual vision, thus being freed from big,
Differentiations.
low, etc. One becomes purified in his consciousness and able to develop Krishna consciousness in his spiritual identity. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna
Mataji.
Prabhuji.
Thank you, Hare
The
Krishna.
first one,
So
which is
we see a
highlighted,
person, we have material vision, but a person who is a devotee of Lord, who has developed Krishna consciousness, he has a spiritual vision. He does not discriminate people, plants, any living form by through his bodily features or bodily form. He sees in everyone Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Super Soul, and he knows that this person has got presence of individual soul as well as Super Soul in the form of Paramatma. So this is the correct type of vision. And as I mentioned that at the time of beginning, universal destruction or annihilation, everything is destroyed. But soul and super soul, they merge into the Lord. And ultimately, when creation is repeated or creation takes place again, they also given based on their propensities or karmas and desires, and some kind of life form is given to them. So 30:31 says, vision of actual serious, but when you read it.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. The previous one, the first one which is highlighted, Prabhuji,
When one
that
sees
when
that,
one
yes,
sees
yeah,
that,
yes, Mataji.
can you just
Please read.
slightly explain on that, Prabhuji, please? Hare Krishna.
Yeah, when one sees that the various bodies of living entities uh, are due to the different desires of the individual soul and do not actually belong to the soul itself, actually sees. Actual seer, this is the definition. When, when we die or when leave about this material body, then we have got two things with us which go with our subtle body. And what are those subtle body? Mind, false ego, and of course soul also goes with us. So these mind and false ego, they are like ropes. They keep the soul tightly bound by different kind of desires and intense propensity at the time of living body. This is what happened at the time of when, Ajamila left his body. He was such a fallen soul, but at the time of leaving body, he remembered Narayana, his son, by default. He and Lord, the four armed form of Narayana or Vishnu considered that he is remembering me. So Vishnu Dutas came here, you see. But because of his past karma, the Yamdutas also come. So there was a scuffle between the two. Vishnu, each one wanted to take the soul of Ajamila. So here this is very clearly mentioned that desires of the individual and not actually belong to the soul. So soul is, we have in Jnana Yoga we have learned the properties of soul and difference between soul and super soul, again repeated in this chapter also, chapter 13, that soul by its own nature, it is ajar, amar, it is not affected by any kind of, but the three modes of material nature, when an individual comes in contact with Prakriti, that he wants to fulfill his desire and the soul gets contaminated then. But here says one who sees that various bodies of living living entities arise due to the different desires of the individual soul. So soul has certain desire, as just now I gave the example of a hog or a dog or a tree or a pious person or a demigod. So based on that desires, the living life form is given by the Lord Krishna, and the nature immediately shapes that form. Do not directly link to source self actually says. So one has to understand that whatever we are doing is because of the material body coming in contact with material nature, but the soul is not the doer here. Soul is bound by the desires, and the desires is fulfilled by the carried out by the material body, which is again the basis of contact, oncoming contact with the material nature. Is that clear, Mataji? Am I clear?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Thank you, Prabhuji.
So a person who is not in knowledge, who does not distinguish between material body and soul, actually he forms various living forms or life forms. But a person who is in knowledge, he knows that soul is bound by three modes of material nature. That is why it has got contaminated, and the material body wants to fulfill its desires. The soul wants to get its desires fulfilled by coming in contact with the Prakriti or material nature. So this is the meaning of this highlighted lines. Yes, Mataji.
Yes. Nature, the enjoyer, and the consciousness. Vision of actual seer. Vision of actual seer. All activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature. The self does nothing. When does he attain Brahman conception? Purified consciousness can thus develop Krishna consciousness. Cease to see different identities due to different material bodies. Ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies. Okay, what's the meaning of that? Later, please explain it.
Yes,
Thus,
yes.
absence of any material differentiation because of different bodies. Okay. He sees how beings are expanded everywhere.
So the actual seer, the qualities we have already discussed, that the body performs when it comes, the material body or kshetra, when it comes in contact with the Prakriti or material nature, it carries out the activity. But the self does nothing. That means soul does not. Self is soul. Soul does not do anything. When does Brahman Brahman Sampadam, just now we have heard this word. So when does this Brahman level of realization arises, ceases to see different identities due to material concept of life. So, just a minute. Sorry, it got paused, in fact. So we have seen here, when does he attain Brahman conception? Because by meditation, there is purification, internal and external purification, and through that he realizes Brahman conception. Conception means the realization of the Paramatma form of feature. Then firstly, there is Brahman realization is first level where the only sun rays are recognized. Then there is a Paramatma form of realization. That is a higher stage of God realization. In that, super soul is recognized by and the highest form is Bhagvat form of realization. So Brahman formation, Brahman form of realization, God realization is the middle stage. So when one becomes fixed in this Brahman form of realization, that she realizes that Paramatma is pervading all living forms and non-moving or moving forms, non-moving or moving living forms, then he attains this Brahman Sampadam or Brahman realization of platform. So then he sees that the Supreme Personality of God has expanded everywhere in the form of Paramatma and is present in the heart of each and every one. Yes, Mataji, 32.
Yes, Prabhuji. Anaditvan nirgunatvat paramatmayam avyayah
Just a minute.
sharira
Just a minute, Mataji. Yeah. Please,
sharira
please start with
Sorry.
the beginning. Sorry, I'm intervening. Please start with the beginning because verse was broken in between.
yeah. Anaditvan nirgunatvat paramatmayam avyayah sharira stopi kaunteya na karoti na lipyate. Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body, O Arjuna, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled.
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
So here there is a distinction between the soul and the material body. The soul is eternal, transcendental, part and parcel of Lord, but it is situated in the material body of the living entity. The body is material, it is perishable, it is not eternal, it is not transcendental, it is perishable, and it in fact has to subject to certain kind of change in the life. But does the soul and body mix up? They mix up or integrate with each other? They do not. Despite contact with the material body, original the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. It is not involved only. But but when it comes in contact with material nature or Prakriti, it gets contaminated and wants to fulfill its desire. So now in next two verses, Krishna is going to give two analogies about the relationship between the soul and the material body. Yes, Mataji.
The sky, yeah, it has to go up, Prabhuji. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all pervading. Similarly, the soul, situated in Brahman vision, does not mix with the body, though situated in that body. Hare Krishna.
So this is nothing explanation, no explanation is required. We know the sun is all pervading, the sunlight is present all over. And similarly, the soul is also there, but soul does not mix with the material body. It remains separate entity. It becomes, it does not mix with the matter or material body. So the example is given of the sky where sun is there. Sun spreads lights all over, but it does not mix up with anything. So this is another analogy. And yes, Mataji, you are interested about it. Two analogies are given. Anyone else would like to read after Mataji?
I like to read, Prabhuji.
Yes, please continue, Mataji. Then the air enters.
The air enters into water, mud, stool, and whatever else is there, still it does not mix with anything. Similarly, the living entity, even though situated in varieties of bodies, is aloof from them due to his subtle nature. Therefore, it is impossible to see with the material eyes how the living entity is in contact with this body and how he is out of it after the destruction of the body. No one in science can ascertain this.
So the
Hare Krishna.
scientists, thank you, Mataji, the scientists do agree there is some life force, but they do not identify soul and super soul. They say that the life force is gone. But what is life force? It is consciousness. And where from this consciousness is coming? Consciousness is coming from soul. The moment soul leaves the body, consciousness, the body becomes achet. Chetana is lost immediately. So and how this body, soul leaves the body, this is also a puzzle for scientists. So, but the devotee knows that what is happening. But being materialized a normal person, a scientist, atheist, a philosopher, a speculative gentleman, he cannot see and comprehend that how does soul is separate from body and how does soul live at the time of living, at the death. So science cannot ascertain it, but the devotee. Now, we earlier studied that soul does not mix up with any material because it is transcendental. It is part and parcel of Lord. So analogy here is given. First, that sun was there. Second is because sun rays are falling on the stool, on the farm, on the lake, on the individual and everywhere, but it is not affected by them. Similarly, soul is there in different form of body, but it is not affected. Second analogy is given. We know that air enters into many places, some dirty places, some good places. Even it enters into as a fragrance of a beautiful flower, but still it does not mix with it. It remains separate from it. So this is an analogy that soul and material body are independent and separate. Yes, Mataji.
यथा प्रकाशयत्येक कृष्णं लोकम् इमं रविः क्षेत्रं क्षेत्री तथा कृष्णं प्रकाशयति भारत. O son of Bharat, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness.
Thank you, Mataji. So this is the subject I was discussing earlier. O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe. There is a single sun. We may go 10,000 kilometers away, but it may seem that there are two suns, one at this place and one at the other place. But the sun is one. Supreme Personality is one. Super Soul or Paramatma is one, but it is spread out all over. It pervades every living form. So does the living entity. Living entity is referring here to the soul, individual soul. Living entity, one within the body, because each individual has got an individual soul. It illuminates the entire body by consciousness. The feature of Chetana or feature of being life force or the feature of living, that is feature of life is consciousness. We know we have got Chetana. This consciousness is lost when the body leaves this body, the soul leaves this body. That means why we are not active even after the soul has left, if it was a material conception. Then because it is not. The consciousness pervades through each and every cell of human body in the form of soul. Soul, it is the property of soul to exhibit or represent itself by consciousness. And if consciousness is not there, the person is declared to be dead. This is last verse, Mother. This is a beautiful verse.
क्षेत्र क्षेत्रज्ञयोर्येवम् अन्तरं ज्ञानचक्षुषा भूता प्रकृतिमोक्षं च ये विदुर्यान्ति ते परम्. One who knowingly sees the difference between the body and the owner of the body and can understand the process of liberation from this bondage also attains to the supreme goal.
So
Hare
this
Krishna.
is the ultimate instruction of Lord Krishna to Arjuna, that one who knowingly sees the difference between the body and the owner of the body. Body is material body or kshetra, and owner of body is the kshetragya or knower of the body or the soul, individual soul, can understand the process of liberation from this bondage. One who identifies himself not as body, but as also soul, and he knows the properties or attributes of the living body, the material body, and the transcendental soul, then he gets liberation from this bondage. He knows that my body is acting because of coming in contact with the material nature, and the soul is independent. So the person at the time of death, he does not lament, he does not get affected at the time of death. He knows that only soul has left the body, like changing the dress. And the soul is going to assume another dress the next moment when the Lord Krishna glances over the soul and orders certain kind of form, the material nature immediately fashions that kind of form, life form or body form for that person. So such a person who has this supreme knowledge, he is already liberated. So in our thoughts, in our words, in our day-to-day activities, let us classify what we are doing, how, who is doing this thing. Do really I am doing it? Or because of compulsion of three modes of material nature, this is happening. Why good things are happening to others and bad things are happening to me only? So this kind of confusion and that dilemma or delusion will go when we realize that it is our past karma, unfulfilled desires that we have this form, and we are suffering because we want to enjoy the material nature, Prakriti. We want to exercise lordship over this material nature, forgetting our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that He is the owner and proprietor and maintainer, and it is all for Him, for His own enjoyment. Instead, we start doing sense enjoyment of ourselves, and we suffer. So this is the final instruction of Lord Krishna, and this I will not read because it is the same thing which is repeated here. We can see here in this picture. Yes, Mataji, you can read this one.
Bhagavad Gita 13.35, a one verse chapter summary. Seek with the eyes of knowledge, Jnana Chakshusha, the difference between the body and the knower of the body, the process of liberation from bondage in material nature. Result, one attains the supreme goal.
So this is how life forms are different, bodily forms are described, depicted in this picture, and ultimately the soul and super soul is the dominating feature in all of them. And one who knows this thing and why one is doing, one who knows these things about who is doing, who is the doer, one who knows these things, he gets the real knowledge and ultimately the supreme knowledge. So this is just a repeat summary of it, this much. And these are the, again, repetition of the description. 13.1, we remember, let us recapitulate 6 questions. What is Prakriti Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrakya, and Dhyan, Dhyanam, Gyam? And Krishna answers question 3 and 4 and the field of activities and lower in 2 to 7. 8 to 12, he answers about process of knowledge and how to attain this knowledge and the outcome of this knowledge. 13 to 19, he answers 6 questions. What is the object of knowledge or Gyam? And that is soul and super soul. 20 to 26, he answers about question 1 and 2, the Prakriti Purush and their union. How the Prakriti means material nature, and the Purush is the individual soul or the living entity. They integrate with themselves and cause this suffering for themselves. And what is the 27:35? Jnana Chakshusa, the vision of knowledge. One who attains this vision of knowledge, he actually is the seer. He is actually the person who sees the things, or he is the person who sees material body, soul, and the super soul in right perspective. So he is the actual seer. So we come to end of this chapter. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna. Any questions or suggestions or corrections or additions, Mataji? Would like to see. This is a slightly philosophical chapter, but it is the real fact which we most of us knowingly ignore. We learn it from Gita every time in a class and then forget that we consider ourselves the doer. Ahankar vimudhatma, karta aham iti manyate. We forget the 3 doers. We forget that it is the material body by compulsively which is doing certain activities by coming in contact with material. So this is the beauty of this chapter. Any suggestion? Or I have not posted the attendance link. I'll just now post attendance link. Please fill the attendance link. Attendance before you leave. Any observations, Prabha Mataji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. As you said, this is so many times we hear, but still it is difficult to absorb. And of course, the explanation is very good, but still, I think we may have to hear again and again the video to go deep into it, Prabhuji.
Very true. Because we have material vision. We don't have a spiritual vision. We are Kanishta Adhikari. not even Kanishta Adhikari, lower than Kanishta Adhikari. We are trying to learn something by hearing, by practicing, and still some have got the fortune of coming in contact with pure devotees or scraping a bona fide spiritual master. They are much elevated as compared to us. We are fallen souls. We are Agyan, we are Mora. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So, closing prayer, Riya Mataji will say, like to say, one second. Please unmute and
वंशकल्पतरुभ्यः कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। जय श्री कृष्ण। हरे
thank you,
कृष्ण।
Mataji. Your pronunciation of beginning prayers and this one was very good today. You have improved a lot.
Thank you.
Krishna's
Thank you.
mercy. Just keep on practicing. God is very kind to all.
Okay, bro.
Thank
you, bro.
Thank you, Prabhuji and Mataji, for your association, and Dandavat Pranam and Hare Krishna devotees. Please feel that.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhanyavad.